Is there a place in your life that you absolutely have to get to? What are you prepared to do to give up to get there? And when life gets hard, what inspires you to push through hard things? Coming up, I'm going to talk about what the Ironman taught me about pushing through hard things in life. Because if you're ever going to face anything hard in life, you need to know that pain is temporary, but quitting lasts forever. So today we're talking about grit and determination as two absolutely necessary ingredients to completing and doing hard things. And one thing I learned from the Ironman is that you've got to embrace the pain. You've got to push through the pain, because what's on the opposite side of pain is that thing that you're looking for. Anything worthwhile in life that is hard, you've got to push through the pain to get there. So when I was running in my first Ironman triathlon, I made a huge mistake. I didn't pay attention closely enough during the race briefing. I was just taking it all in. And in one moment, they explained that the run was a 2-loop course. I didn't hear that. So on race day, when I went out, I did my 4-kilometer swim, I did my 180-kilometer bike ride, and then I got to the run portion of the marathon. And halfway through the marathon, I thought that, how hard can this thing be? I see the finish line coming up. Marathons aren't that hard. I wasn't doing the math in my head. And I was running beside this gentleman who all of a sudden, as I got to the finishing chute, he disappeared. I looked around and I thought, where did that guy go? And I asked one of the people, one of the volunteers at the top of the finishing chute, and I said, there was a guy running beside me. What happened to him? And she said, oh, he's probably on his victory lap. Now, I had run in a number of shorter triathlons up until this point, where sometimes I had to add a little bit of distance, maybe had to run around a building or around a parking lot to get the correct amount of distance to finish the race. So when she said victory lap, I thought, oh, he must be running around the block or something to make up the race. And she said he probably went that way. So I turned right as opposed to going down the finishing chute. And had I gone down the finishing chute, I would have been disqualified from the race because I would have crossed the finish line without completing the full race course. Because as you see, when I turned right, went around the building, went around the block, I found myself back on the same run course at the start of the run course. And that's when it dawned on me. I'd only run half a marathon. I hadn't run the full marathon yet. And that's when things got hard. And I did the math in my head. And I thought to myself, this is hard, this hurts, and if I just walk, I'll finish the race. So I started walking. And I started having a little pity party for myself, thinking about how stupid I was that I didn't pay attention, how stupid I was that I allowed myself to believe that I was done. I wasn't picking my head up. I wasn't paying attention. And then I found another gentleman who I was walking with, who was also from Canada, and he was injured. And you know, misery loves company. So the two of us talked for about 10 minutes as we walked. And I was listening about his injury. And I thought to myself, I'm not injured. I'm just stuck. I stopped running because I felt sorry for myself because it was hard. And then after about 15 minutes, I said, hey man, it was nice to meet you, but I've got to get going. So as I started to run again, let me tell you, if you've just started a running journey and you think you know what pain is, you have no idea what pain is until you've gotten that far into an Ironman, you've walked, and then you've decided you're going to start running again. My muscles and my legs were torn to shreds and on fire. And at that point, you have to ask yourself, why would somebody in their right mind put them through that? Put themselves through that? Why wouldn't you just quit and go home? There's no prize money at the end of the road. There's no, big award coming your way. You're just one of the many who are going to finish that day. I could have walked and finished within the 18-hour time frame. But something inside me said, you're not going to be that guy who walks across the finish line feeling sorry for himself. You're going to get your ass in gear and you're going to push through the pain and you're going to start running again. That lesson has stuck with me since that day in 2011 for my entire life to this point, and will stick with me for the rest of my life. That when things get hard, you have choices. You can either stop and slow down and join the pity party, or you can push through hard things. You can find out what you're really made of. Yes, you're going to make mistakes. That's life. You're going to learn from those mistakes, and you're going to learn to push through. That is where the first part of self-motivation and pushing through pain and hard things taught me that, you know what? I know what hard is. And a lot of things that I see in life, whether it be in my work or in my relationships with my friends, the things that I think are hard aren't even close to being hard. And I find myself with a lot of my friends being the person who takes the initiative to do things, because simple little things like picking up the phone and talking to somebody feels hard to a lot of people. But I've done hard things and I know that's not hard. So when you become the type of person who gets comfortable becoming self-motivated and becomes comfortable doing and pushing through hard things, the things that you think are hard aren't going to be as hard anymore. And when you push through doing hard things, what's on the other side of that pain is something that money can't buy. And when I first became a triathlete, I learned this very clearly. There were some celebrities at our race. And Gordon Ramsay did a race. The celebrity chef did an Ironman race. There were some Pittsburgh Steelers football players who were there doing the race. And you know what? They all had to suffer through and push through the same training that I pushed through. Even though they've got money, even though they've got celebrity status, they couldn't buy their way to a shortcut to the finish line. Everybody who wants to get to that place in the world has to train and push through the pain to get to that same place. It is the world's great equalizer. And the one thing I love about the Ironman is I can't think of another sport where the professional athletes play on the same playing field with the amateur athletes. But the thing is, there's this mutual respect for everybody who toes the line, who says, I'm brave enough to step up and do this thing. And if you've put in the time in the training, if you've pushed through the pain to that point, you've earned the respect of every other athlete in the field, regardless of whether they're the world's best or the world's worst Ironman triathlete. You know, there's just this level of community, and I talk about community on these videos all the time, right? This is the social proof that we're all working together, the social incentive that we're all working together. The idea that you're not alone is hugely important when it comes to self-motivation. Finding a community of people who are all pushing through the same struggle is a huge part to making you feel like what you're doing is the right thing. So if you're struggling through something right now and you're pushing through some pain, know that you're not the only person who's going through that. And you can use a channel like this in the comments to connect with people who are also struggling, trying to push through some pain. But on the other side of that pain is something that you're going to really, really enjoy. And that is the self-satisfaction of knowing you are not the type of person who's going to quit. You're not the type of person who's going to give up. Greatness is on the other side of pain. And it's not about the medals or the finish line. What it's about, in my mind, greatness is the legacy that you're leaving for the people around you. When my son was rowing in high school, I became a rowing coach. And in our crew of rowing coaches at his high school, most of the rowing coaches actually rowed at the Olympic level for Canada. I was the only person there, the only coach who was not an Olympic rowing athlete or an ex-Olympic rowing athlete. As a matter of fact, I rowed in high school in some of the worst shells because we had the most underfunded school. My rowing career in high school is a great memory, but it was nowhere close to being successful. And I think back to that and I ask myself, why did these elite athletes allow me to come in and get involved and help coach these kids? And the reason became very clear is because while I was coaching these kids, I was also training as an Ironman. And I remember going down to the Henley, which is where in St. Catharines, it's sort of Canada's national rowing course. And I would go down there and I would sit on the picnic bench, and the kids who I was coaching and rowing would find their friends from other schools. And they would bring those kids up to me and say, hey, tell them about this Ironman thing you're doing. And I would say, well, you guys all know what it feels like to row 2 kilometers, because from the starting gates to the finishing line on a rowing course, an Olympic rowing course, that's 2 kilometers. So he says, now imagine getting in the starting gate and swimming to the finish, and then turning around and swimming back to the starting gates. That's a 4-kilometer swim. Then get out of the water and ride your bike from St. Catharines around the lake to Toronto and then back. That's about 180 kilometers. And then get off your bike and run to Hamilton. That's a 42-kilometer run. And because these kids who may have been 15, 16, 17 at the time, because they were rowers and they understood the distance, how hard 2 kilometers was, they sat there dumbstruck that somebody would actually put themselves through that amount of pain, that amount of torture. And then they'd say, how long did that take you to do that? And I'd say, well, my first one took 14 hours and I'm working on my next one, and that's hopefully going to be 10 and a half hours. And they would just look at you like a deer in the headlights, because they could imagine the distance. They couldn't imagine pushing through that kind of pain. Because if you've ever rowed, you know that that is nothing but 6 minutes of anaerobic, massive pain. You know, you jump out of the starting blocks, you settle in, and then you give it absolutely everything you've got for the last 500 meters. And when you're done, you can't breathe, you can't move, you are spent. Your muscles are burning. And guess what? Doing an Ironman feels exactly like that, only it's not just for 6 minutes. It's anywhere from, actually, the shorter your time, the faster your time, the more it hurts. So when I think about why I do the Ironman or why I do hard things, it's because I'm inspiring the people around me. We need mentors. Kids today need mentors in their life. They need to be able to see somebody who's had a different life than everybody else. You know, before I had that chance meeting and bumped into an Ironman triathlete, I had never met an Ironman triathlete in my life. Now I know that there's a few of them here in the area that I live. I know who they are. I train with them. And the kids that I used to coach in rowing know that there's an Ironman triathlete in the community. And he looks different maybe than their mom and dad. What I love about feeling the way that I feel is that when I go out and do a race and I bump into one of the kids that I've inspired, that is what this is all about for me. I'm playing with kids that are less than half my age. I have done, in that crew, that rowing crew that I talked about, I've done a triathlon with 3 of those guys, my son included. I inspired them to get involved in the sport of triathlon, which is amazing. They're all much better than I am because they're younger and they're fitter, and they should be. But what's on the other side of pain for me is not only inspiration for me, but it's the inspiration for everybody around me. So you can choose, because nobody's forcing you to do this, whatever it is you're doing, you can choose to push through the pain, push through the hard times, and get to the other side and feel really good about yourself that you got there. Or you can quit if it's not that important to you, and you can live with the consequences of giving up on your dream. But it's not just your selfish dream that you're giving up on, if it's something really worth chasing after, it's giving up on who you could have been and who you could have inspired in your community. That to me is the real benefit, the real driver. What self-motivates me to get to the other side of hard things is knowing the impact that I'm going to have on the people around me, and knowing the impact that I'm going to have on myself, because I know that now what I thought was hard probably isn't that hard at all. And that's helped me become a better father, a better husband, a better salesperson, because that's what I do for a living. It's helped me to do hard things because I know what hard feels like, and I know I can get to the other side. So that brings me to our board. If you're part of this community, if you're part of this journey, we are now on day 9. Let's give that a big check. We're on that pushing through part where we've gotten through some hard stuff. We started, got a little hard, maybe got a little confusing, but we're pushing through now. We're getting to the other side of pain. So to recap, in order to get to where you want to go to in life, in most cases, you've got to push through hard things. And those are hard things that money can't buy. You have to put in the effort to get there. And usually, what's on the other side of hard things is greatness. And that greatness isn't always a cash prize or a reward. It's the person you've become that's inspired everybody else around you. And so what I'm going to talk about tomorrow in this video right here is there is a downside to pushing through grit and determination. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow because it's not always the right thing to do. So if you enjoyed this video, if you found value in this video at all, if this inspires you at all, I encourage you to like the video. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, because this channel is all about sharing the knowledge that I've gained over the last 18 years as an Ironman triathlete and sharing these little nuggets of wisdom. And I hope that, somewhere in these videos, you'll find 1 or 2 nuggets that work for you. I would love it if you found something that worked. Drop a comment. Let the community know that something's working for you. And hey, that would make everybody around us who's also a part of this journey, regardless of when you're doing this journey, it would make us all feel better together. So with that, have an awesome day today, and we'll see you tomorrow in the next video.